Okay, thanks so much for coming back. I think some of our other panelists from our previous session are hopefully trickling back in this way. So first I just want to get started with some observations from the sort of investment side, from the people who are looking at organizations like Malaysiakini, like Newstapa, like Rappler as an investment opportunity, as a philanthropic opportunity, as a member of this community of mission-driven information organizations. And I'm just asking our panelists for this session, Ross Settles from Media Development Investment Fund and Shruti from Omidyar Network, what they look for when they're looking at organizations like these. So we'll have a few minutes of observation from all of us, and then we'll kick it over to you guys for your questions. Ross, you want to go first? Sure, if you don't mind. We've got hand mics too, if you prefer. You can do it.
We'll do it sitting. Can you guys hear? Yeah? So let me do a little bit of introduction, just so you get a sense of who I am. So MDIF, some of you know the organization, some of you don't. MDIF is an investment fund. We only invest in media, and our mandate is quite narrow. It's really content or data-driven media in markets that you can choose your language, emerging markets, third world markets, global, whatever. And we don't invest in the US, we don't invest in Australia, we don't invest in Western Europe. But we look, and our mandate has begun to evolve in terms of what we look for. We tend to look for people that are content creators, and content can be video, text, stories. They tend to have we tend to lean very heavily on content creators that have a social mission, a reporting or watchdog mission. So for instance, is this better? Is this better? Ah, yes. So for instance, we would not look at a sports site. But I say that, and we did just look at a site in Indonesia that was a women's sports site. So it has a social benefit of promoting women's involvement in society. But it is basically through the venue of sports. And all of the content is original. It is an online site with a mobile application, etc. And as some of you heard in the session 2 days ago, we tend to look at two different types of things. We will look at a large institution, a for-profit institution. We are, again, an investment fund. So that means we put money in and we expect to get at least that much money out, which means that the organizations are generally for-profit. They are generally growing in some way, shape, or form. They have a growth plan. And they're an organization. They're an institution with a business mindset, with an editorial mindset, and often with a technology backbone, some specific insight into how technology informs on content. But we also look at kind of individual creators that are passionate about a particular vertical. But again, they have to have a for-profit mentality, and the best examples of these, you will see them like in the US. There is Jessica Lesson's The Information, or it's a little bit more arcane, but Rafat Ali's Skift, which is about the travel and conventions industry. But we would look at those, especially if it is a founder who has a very specific and clear vision, relying on kind of communicating that vision through content, and actually wants to grow it into an institution. So that's kind of the way we look at it. We are not always a simple fund in the sense of our process. We go through several, we look at the country quite carefully, then we look at the market, and then we look at the institution. So we have a kind of a long process. The other thing I would say about the process is once you're through the process, we're kind of like undivorceable. Once we've adopted you into the fold, I think this is quite common with Omidyar, unless you tell us to get lost, we are there with technical support, capacity building support. We do a lot of short-term loans in terms of once you're in the fold, we provide a lot of other both financial and technical support. That's kind of who we are and what we do.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I thought I'd just start off by talking a little bit about Omidyar Network and who we are and why I'm here. So Omidyar Network is actually a philanthropic venture capital fund, and we have a wide mandate. We do financial inclusion, we do education, and we also do governance and citizen engagement. When we look at independent media, we are looking at it from the point of view of the role it plays between governments and citizens. So Independent media is clearly, something that helps better and well-governed democracies emerge. And that's the angle that we see as being really important when we look at an investment opportunity. And I use the term investment quite often, but investments to us are both for-profits and non-profits. If I look at our India portfolio, we have done a fair number of non-profit grants, and we also done a fair number of for-profit grants. Globally, it's about 50-50% when it comes to how we spend our money. So, investigative journalism in particular is something that in media plays a role of, sort of shining the lens of accountability on governments and catching out where there have been lapses in, behavior or lapses in accountability. And we see that role as being quite crucial because media has always played the role of prioritizing the ideas that are going to be discussed, right? So the first part is, that platform where information is put up to the citizens. But the more important role has always been the curation that media inevitably does. I see that from the other side today, civic technology platforms, they're also approaching this, right? So if you look at a change.org, or if you look at an Avaz, they are trying to get citizens to sign petitions. They're trying to get people to talk about what's important to them. So we see that sort of convergent platform where you're looking at the issues that matter to citizens and bringing them up and prioritizing the dialogue with the government as the role of the media and as something that we want to invest into. Coming to why do we invest into independent media? Because there has been a gradual erosion in the idea of what independence is, right? And what drives this? It's the fact that to be truly independent, you need to have an independent editorial team. And if you have pressure from large advertisers who don't want you to, say, cover a particular industrial incident, or if you have ownership from a concentrated source which does not want you to cover a particular topic, or if you have a not very diverse team which cannot actually represent the real issues on the ground, then these are all erosions in the role that media plays. So we want to fund startups, both in the non-profit and the for-profit world, who are looking to create solutions to this. When I think about what kind of ideas we actually invest into, the first is a credible team. The journalists, the editors, the owners, who are they? Why are they here? What is their mission in actually starting this company? That's the most important part to us. Is there a strategic fit between their vision and our vision? The second part that comes out is there an articulated value proposition? What are you trying to do? What will it cost? And how does it happen? We really believe in the importance of planning, whether, again, it's a grant or an investment. We are very interested in entrepreneurial founders who understand that there is a requirement today for a fail fast, fail forward engagement model. Independent media and media in general is in the midst of a disruption where the advertisement funding model is under pressure. So we are looking for the entrepreneurs who are trying to build a product that is different from what has already been proven to not work at scale. And the last part is we have a huge focus on leveraging the technology wave. Are you a digital native? Right? Because it is the way to create low-cost content. It is the way to reach out to a large number of people. And I think beyond just the internet, today there are a lot of very interesting technologies when it comes to radios, when it comes to GRIN's platforms, which means that you can reach out to people who are not in the internet connectivity world, but definitely carry a phone or definitely have access to a central node where information can be disseminated. So the question is, are you an enthusiast who's looking to disrupt the mode of communication? And are you aware of the best ways that you can do it? Which means that you need to be a little bit of a technology enthusiast yourself. The second part is, are you looking to innovate on engagement? Traditionally, journalists have played the role of broadcasting information, right? When you print, you put the story out, it's there. You did not receive that feedback. Increasingly, today, you get your comments. You get the fact that people are not reading articles. You get very specific reactions immediately to things that are put out. I think it's a great way to the convergence point, right? If you're trying to, as journalists, represent the issues that really matter to citizens, then This is the way for citizens to also come into the process. So then are you leveraging this engagement model? Are you leveraging the potential that exists today to involve citizens into the conversation? And the last part, digital is where the future is. Increasingly, all countries are getting access to the internet. Increasingly, everyone is making attempts to connect them through smartphones or non-smartphones and get everyone onto a network where they can communicate with a larger body. So given that this is a future and we are an investment firm, we are trying to create value for the future. We do look at this area as something that's very important. So that's sort of like who we are and what we're doing and who we want to invest into.
Thanks. I think those are great observations. I just wanted to add a little bit of what I've heard as in this morning's session and in some of the other discussions we've had about kind of business models and how organizations are structured. A lot of the same themes keep popping up, and it's occurred to me as I listen to them that a lot of these are things that I look at when I'm exploring a potential relationship with a client, because I want to know that I have something to work with, that I'm in a position where I can add value and they have some fundamentals in place that are going to make them attractive to the kind of foundation donor or high net worth individual that I'd want to help them get in front of. So in my experience, the things I look for in a sustainable, successful organization are a mission. What's the kind of North Star that guides the decisions and the priorities of the organization? And can you articulate that in a couple of clear, jargon-free sentences? There's a vision in place. You have a 3 or a 5 year plan, and you've built some resilience into that, knowing that the environment may change, the economy may change, the news cycle may change. So you've sort of diversified your thinking about how you're going to survive. Accountability. If I look at a website and I look at your sort of About Us page, and you've got your staff listed, can I look at that and draw an org chart, that makes sense? Is it clear who reports to whom? Where does the buck stop in the organization? Just so that we know that there's structure, there's accountability, and there's some transparency that you're, as an organization, embodying the values that you represent in your journalism. What's the product? What is the thing that you do? What is the service that you provide? What's the unique contribution that you make? Journalists aren't always attuned to kind of thinking about their work as product. But if you're going to be a business, which is what starting an organization of any kind, nonprofit or for-profit, means, you have to think about your product and be able to define that in really clear terms. Who's your audience? Again, can you define it? How are you going to reach them? How are you going to measure that? And who's your community? Maybe it's the same as your audience, but maybe it's not. GIJN has an audience, but it also has a community. We have a constituency. How do you engage with that community? How do you engage with your audience? And what are the outcomes from that? So those are my sort of takeaways in terms of the things that I look for in knowing that an organization has that sort of sound foundation. And maybe not all of those pieces are in place with the clients I help. I try to kind of figure out what are the weak spots, what do we need to work on, and it's my job to kind of ask the hard questions so that by the time you get in front of Ross or in front of Shruti with their expectations, they're poised to meet those. So with that, I'll open it up to your questions. I know we have a couple of the panelists from this morning's sessions too, so if you guys want to come up front with us so that if people have questions for you too, that would be great. Stephen, I see you. I think Kim Jong is here. Questions?
Hi, my name is Wahyu from Indonesia. I just wonder if you guys can give a brief, like an overview about how long usually you support a startup until it can become sustainable on its own. Thank you.
So how long we support? That's a very good question. We will often be early investors, and in some cases we will continue to be involved either through short-term grants, continuing investments, training, capacity building for 10 or 15 years, 20 years. Yeah. So until there is no need. I guess is the best answer.
So I think to me the question would be what kind of startup you are. So if we look at our, to the people to whom we give a grant, we are trying to help them build towards a point where they have multiple diversified funders. So whether or not we continue, we will work to make sure that you have other funders who can continue after we are not there. When it comes to for-profits, we are patient capital. What that means in non-jargon term is that we are willing to wait for a long time and see the company succeed and see its social impact mission fulfilled. That said, if there's a divergence from the impact mission, right? If you are still growing, but you started saying that you need to do something else to stay alive, that's a more difficult point to be in, and that's a challenge. But yes, while the company is trying to continue on its full mission of, impact, we would stay as long as needed, as Ross already said.
Yeah, hi. I don't know if I'm visible. I'm Priyanka. I'm an independent journalist from India. I have been doing independent work since 6 years, covering issues of human rights and violence from Central India and Northeast India, and also recently from Central America. And I give that perspective because I've had to evolve from writing to also photography and just basically having 10 hands to try and be out there and sell the product. And I'm glad you guys spoke about the need for a good team and the vision and all of that. So I have been a kind of like an entrepreneur for my work, but I've seen a lot of the startups collapsing simply because we are good at our job, and that's journalism. But we may not be great business people. We may not be thinking in those other business terms of fundraising, and there's so many other things, So I'm wondering, how do you suggest about those things while we're still keeping our best thing going, which is journalism, while also keeping that product going on really well and building it up? Thank you.
So I think the way I think about it is this, right? Is maybe it's more about the fact that your mission is to create a certain kind of impact. If you look at it that way yourself, I think that would motivate you to acquire either the skills that will help you develop a business plan and be a business person, or you find the people who share enthusiasm in your impact and bring that complementary skill set in. So yes, it is difficult for people who have been sort of always immersed in the world of journalism to immediately adopt the features that they need as business people. But we've seen a lot of very, very inspirational entrepreneurs who are hardcore journalists. And Maria Ressa, who is the CEO of Rappler, and you saw Glenda, who is the co-founder. Both of them are very formidable as a team. They bring both journalism chops and a business sense to their work. On the other hand, I have something in India called Scroll, which you might be aware of. So in that case, there's Naresh Fernandez, who's the editor, who's the journalism person. And then there's Sameer Patil, who is the founder and the entrepreneur. And so you need to either find the people who can help you with your mission, or you find the energy, like a lot of other entrepreneurs, to learn the skills to take your impact forward.
So I will echo a lot of what Shruti said, but let me kind of address this to you somewhat more personally, because that's kind of the way I understood the question. And to a certain extent, it is a lifestyle choice, right? There is, some of you may know, there's an American journalist in the 60s and 70s, I.F. Stone. I.F. Stone, very famous as a incredibly independent, ran a newsletter for years on a mimeograph machine in a garage in Washington, D.C. So that is a lifestyle. And he, just as Shruti said, he found the energy, he found the extra capital to have the independence that he felt he needed to report on Washington during the Vietnam War. Or you can say, my vision is bigger than me alone, and go find your peers. And it can be a business peer, as in Scroll. It can be another peer with whom you share the responsibility for learning the business. But a lot of it comes down to your own lifestyle choice, right? How much money do you want to make? How lonely do you want to be? I.F. Stone was famous as being a very lonely and somewhat depressed individual. But so that's the question for you. And there are lots of different directions to go.
Yeah, coming from my own experience, I'm really lucky in a sense that the co-founder of Malaysiakini, even though he's a journalist, but he has an interest in business. So Pramesh Chandran. And when we first started, right from the beginning, we have decided that I would look after content, and he'll look after business side. And it's great that he, being a journalist, or he was a former journalist, be able to understand the business. And I think that is important too. You need to find someone who can understand journalism as well, not just a pure entrepreneur. Someone may not be a journalist, but at least someone who can have certain understanding and share the kind of values that your organization would like to espouse. So for Malaysiakini, he understand the war between that there has to be almost a impregnable war between advertising and editorial. So he never complained to me at all over the past 16 years regarding advertising. If there's any complaints from advertisers regarding content, so I think that's important too, really. Yeah, if you cannot do it yourself, and myself, I do not have that kind of acumen. I hate spreadsheets, and I hate. Not anymore, but initially, I hate numbers. But eventually, it's great to find someone who you can team up with. Otherwise, you will have to learn those skills. It's one of those things. You want to start something new.
I have a question to MDIF. So is it possible for you to invest in good journalism but in not so independent media like China or Vietnam? Thank you.
Ooh, I would like to take you to my next board meeting. It is, right now I think it would be a very difficult sell, because in the end our core is the watchdog function. And the watchdog function, it can be data, as in what CIJ India is doing. But there, you do see journalists. I spend a lot of time in Hong Kong, so I have huge respect for the art of doing the investigation in China. Chinese journalists do some of the most amazing things in the shadow between the line and the light. And I would love to see us support that. But you don't want to support it in a way that creates personal jeopardy for either the institution or the journalists themselves. So it is not that we don't want to be in China or Vietnam. It is that we have to do it in a way that doesn't create any personal insecurity for people. Does that make sense? And quite honestly, it's quite difficult. It's a problem that if any of you have suggestions, I would be more than open. But yeah, no greater. There's lots of great talent in Vietnam and in China. That we would love to find a way to support institutionally, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't create harm.
This question is for all of you. My name is Joydeep Gupta, and I work for and run 2 niche websites. So I'm asking you for your experiences with niche websites. One is the thirdpole.net, which looks at environment over most of Asia, except West Asia. The other is India Climate Dialogue, which looks at climate issues all over India. Since this morning, we've been hearing mostly about general news websites. Third Pole has been running for 6 years with grants. India Climate Dialogue has been running for 2 years with grants. Do you have any experience, and what's your advice if one wants to diversify from pure grants to other models of income, investment, revenue?
So if I heard your question right, it's basically that you have a niche website which is running so far on grants, and I assume then your, the people who've supported you are also interested in those specific niche topics. And now, how do you diversify from there? Is that only in revenue terms or also in terms of the content? Okay. So to me, I'm going to bring it to something that I am personally very interested in learning more about, which is about your user and your user's needs, right? So identifying who your user is and what do they want. And I mean that you can start at the idea of the demographic, right? You're male, female, what percentage, what income level, and so on. But that's not really your user. Your user is, as you're probably well aware, it's someone who's passionate about certain issues, who buys certain kinds of things, who goes to certain kinds of events, who works a certain kind of job, lives a certain kind of life. And they will have specific needs within that. Maybe it is about a forum for them to meet other like-minded peers and work towards something. So if they're all values-driven, then I think what we heard from Malaysiakini or from KCIJ about giving them a forum to meet and be a part of that movement is useful. If it is about learning more, right? For example, we mentioned the information. There is a huge community of technology enthusiasts and investors in the USA, and that's a specific need that the information fulfills and charges for. It's a hefty subscription model, but what you get out of it is definitely value for money for that community, that they would pay for it, they'll probably pay more for it. Right? So they do board calls. When news breaks about Apple, the subscribers of the information have probably already had a board call. They already know about it. So if you want to be, if you want to diversify, my thought would be, what are the specific things that your users and supporters want from you? And one is the donors, the other is your reader itself. And can you provide that? And then is there a good business plan to do it in a way that it adds margin to your operations?
Hi, morning. I'm Beryl from Indonesian Media in Hong Kong. So I have two questions. First one is, I guess all of us know how important it is to find a good business partner. But the question is how we can find them. Yeah, as Steven said, you are lucky you have someone around you can find them. But for most of the good journalists, it's quite difficult for them to find the good partners to help them to manage the company and really share their values and know how to doing a good business is the first question. The second question is for Steven. You said you are taking care of the content and your partners is taking care of the business. So do you guys have any conflicts about, let's see, how to balance your resources? Let's see how much money to invest in good content and how much money to invest in good advertisement team. So do you have any this kind of conflicts? And how you usually solve this kind of a conflict? Thanks.
Start then.
Conflicts between myself and Prem all the time when it comes to spending money. I think it's always he's definitely tight-faced when it comes to spending money. As a content person, you look at how you're going to do better and try to do better stories to reach out to more people. And you want more people, you want more experienced people and all that. So yes, there's always conflict, but of course there is a great partnership between myself and Prem. We come to some kind of resolution all the time, happy resolution on both sides. So that's the partnership is going on for 16 years. So otherwise we won't still be together. I think the other question they asked is regarding finding somebody. For those who really find hard to get somebody who has certain kind of entrepreneurial skills or business skills or whatever it is, then you would need to develop those skills yourself. You do not. I don't think you need to really, need to go and do a MBA or whatever it is. But I think there are certain courses that you can attend. You would need to understand, Excel, spreadsheets, and all that stuff. So those basic skills, and that can be slowly developed. You need to be. I think management is important in a organization which you are running. And again, I could see often, the journalists can be really good journalists, when it comes to the writing great stories, but very, very bad managers. And I think that is another skill that needs to be developed if you really want to run a successful website. Managing a team of people. How you're going to bring together a team of, sometimes big egos, and get them to work together. And that is important, to make sure that they are focused on the mission rather than, cut down all the office politics, if there's any. Make sure that, they understand at the end of the day, really it is the team that is important rather than the individual, self. So I think the managing them is really important.
And I would also say, just in terms of finding partners, I mean, that's part of the reason why GIJN and organizations like it exist. It's the sort of hypothesis of this group that bringing people together, creates those partnerships that really make important things happen. And I think too, just making that commitment to reaching out to organizations whose work you admire, or whose work you want to model, and ask for their help, ask for advice. I know in one of the earlier presentations, Youngjin mentioned, that he'd interviewed, ProPublica and some of the other nonprofit media outlets and kind of devising KCIJ's business plan. So learning from your peers, I think people are willing to be helpful, are willing to offer advice, and I think it's really worth taking the time to seek those people out and ask them.
Let me just add one other thing, and this is just this. So first of all, I'm not a journalist, and neither Shruti or I think are journalists, right? I started as ad sales, right? So I'm a sales guy. And I find that journalists are often afraid to approach business people, media managers. They are. We tend to be kind of aggressive. We tend to be willing to sell anything. But don't underestimate the power of your vision, right? Because people want to be associated with a good product, right? And this goes back to something that Bridget was saying. If you think of the brand, the vision, the content that you are putting out there as solving a problem, it's exactly what Shruti was saying, solving a problem for an audience, a defined set of people, people will want to be associated with that, right? People will work for nothing. Well, ad sales people generally don't work for nothing, but they'll work for less than they would work in the commercial world. The other thing, and I've had the privilege of working around and even somewhat for Prem and Stephen, there's a lot of trust in the conflict, right? And that's something you have to find, you have to build. It's a bit like marriage, because at the end, you need to be confident that in the end, the conflict doesn't result in a split, right? That you can disagree, come to a resolution, and everybody will accept it. But don't be afraid to approach people. Go to venues where the people you're looking for are. If you've never been to an ad sales conference, they are having conferences just like this, more likely in Singapore than in Kathmandu, but go. If you're looking for a salesperson, go there and then pitch them.
I'd just like to share actually the story of an organization that we funded in India. It's called News Laundry. The founder, Abhinandan Sekhri, is, and so there are two founders, there's Abhinandan Sekhri and Madhu Trehan. Both of them are known as journalists, and as journalists first. Abhinandan still has production experience. So the combination is, completely on the media side. They are not really the people who understand the technology, and they're not necessarily the people who can build the business plan that will take them to 10 years of sustainability, right? What they have is an incredible vision about what they're trying to do, and energy, right? You should, I would really suggest that people go and check their website out. They have multiple pitches asking people to pay for their content, right? And the pitch they make is, if you let advertisers pay for your content, it'll cater to advertisers. If you let governments pay for your content, it'll cater to governments. If you pay for your content, it'll cater to you. So they put it squarely back on the reader or viewer. Similarly, they have put the values out there very clearly, right? They say, this is who we are. We are not about neutrality. We are about letting everyone have an opinion of their own, and this is how it's important. They put their vision out there very clearly, and they get so many people reaching out to them saying, I want to be a part of this. How can I help you? And these are people who are technologists. These are people who are businessmen. These are people who are saying, let me come and help you with your finances. Do you have any requirements on the equipment side? These are not people who are journalists and media people. These are readers that they engage with, who they talk to on the same level as they talk to their own colleagues. And then these people reach back out to them and say, hey, you said you don't have this. Well, how can I help you? So I think if you put your needs out there along with a compelling vision, people really want to be a part of it, and people with many different skill sets. And today, increasingly, because I'm also connected to the civic technology community and movement, there are so many talented people out there who want to do something good with their data analytics, technology, and business skills. They want to come and create an impact. You guys are already on the side of the equation where you've come into something with a passion and a vision. So I would say put that out there, and you should have people coming to you also.
Hi, Namaste. This is Sarita Sresh from Asmita Women's Publication House in Nepal, the only women's publication house in Nepal. It was established in 1988 to deal with the women's issues, to make it mainstream, through various kind of means of media. And since the very beginning of its establishment, it has been, if you see the history of women's movement in Nepal, Asmita has been playing very important role. So I believe that since the establishment of Asmita, we have been facing how to economically sustainable for the organization. So my question is to Shruti, if you have any special fund for those kind of organization which deals with women's issue or gender issues, and my special wish with Malaysiakini, if we can exchange the strategies how we can sustainable without funding. Thank you.
So sorry, I have a disappointing answer, which is that we don't yet have a specific program for gender work. We think it's very important, but we tend to incorporate it into our work. So, for example, if you look at education, then we look at, education for the girl child within that. When it comes to participation, we're very interested that, that there is equal participation from both genders, but then it comes under governance. So we haven't really thought of it like that. But maybe we can speak on the sidelines and I can understand more about what you do. Thanks.
I think different countries would require perhaps different solutions. Sometimes in terms of sustainability, you will have to try it out. I myself am really interested in the Korean model, the membership model, and we may want to we may think about implementing in Malaysia. We just do not know whether it's going to work. So I think it's a good, this is great in the sense that we are learning from each other. Whether it works or not in our own country, we don't know. We have to give it a try. We do, myself and Prem, the co-founders, do go to different countries to help out. So we've been helping out a number of organizations in Myanmar, in East Timor, in Aceh, and all that. So if need be, we're willing to do that. So definitely, yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shri from Murwani Foundation, Bangalore here. So, we publish a magazine called Citizen Matters. So we are in Bangalore and Chennai, and we want to scale up and expand to Goa. So, and the ultimate aim is to reach all the cities, but at the current scale, we are actually public-funded non-profit media. We are not able to, reach where we want to. So do you have any suggestions? Like, we cover purely city-based issues and only urban topics, waste, water, and citizen engagement, citizen activism, all that. And we also conduct many workshops for citizen journalism workshops, student workshops, all that, but we're not able to scale up. Any suggestions from your side?
Sorry, could you elaborate a little bit about what you mean you're not able to scale up? Is that in revenues, users, activities?
Revenues.
I think when it comes to revenues from citizen journalism outfits, I actually really wish that Rappler had been here. I would suggest that you connect with them because they have some history of working with grassroots organizations to train citizen journalists and leverage that reporting in their own work and also find a way for them to fund themselves. But aside from that, I'm sorry, I think the generic advice is this, right? You know, what do your users want? Why are they coming to you? And who are the stakeholders who are interested in that? Because I am actually familiar with Citizen Matters because, Bangalore is a small, tight-knit open data community. I know you guys are part of it. With Citizen Matters, you have a number of people who come out on your drives, right? Do you think that if you started memberships, they'd be interested in supporting you? And the question is this, right? Can you try many quick entrepreneurial projects? Fail fast, fail forward is the term that gets used. It's jargon. But it basically means you try something out on a small pilot basis. If it fails, you learn from it, and then you move forward to something else that you can do. And it's really important to try and keep track of why it failed, right? If it failed because of execution, because you're not at the stage where you can execute, that's one thing. But sometimes ideas fail because the market is not ready. So maybe India is not ready to pay membership fees for anything. But again, just trying to understand constantly from your users why something worked, why something did not work, helps. And the other part, of course, is there are stakeholders who are interested in what you're doing. Like if you're working in health, a Gates Foundation is interested in that. If you're working in urban sanitation, there are people who are interested in that. And they will quite often take the forward-going risk of developing the program because they see it playing out later on. Yes. No, but there are also Indian organizations, and we should, we can speak more. But yes, I mean, it is about finding the stakeholders who are interested. Maybe the government itself, right? The government is very focused right now on sanitation. Is there some kind of thing that you can look to hook up with them? The answer is generic, right? You need to be very entrepreneurial. You need to be comfortable with failure because that's why you're at a startup stage. When you're a startup and you're failing at things, it's not a problem. It's when you can't get anything to stick that you really need to rethink why is it happening.
I guess all I would say is when Shruti is saying kind of the generic answer, but it is if you're in a startup stage, the easiest thing to do is to try it and fail but if nothing is sticking, I mean, it is called generic advice because it is generic. It is the best way to expand, is to continue to try, continue to push the envelope. When the envelope moves, then go that direction.
Hi, I have a question. Now, in our quest for sustainable long-term business models for journalism in the public interest, we've been talking exclusively of online products, and with good reason as well. But I'm just wondering whether any of you, the three of you from funding organizations, and Stephen, if you had a chance, is there still life in print? I believe there's life in the old donkey because people are still willing to pay, your audience is still willing to pay for a tangible product. All said and done. Right? Even though we are either digital immigrants or digital natives. But at the end of the day, so I think the question I want to ask you is, what is your thinking on this? Do you have any examples of startups that have done well using a variety of channels, both old and new, everything from social media up to a tangible print product? And do you think that this will work at all?
So let me preface this with, this is my personal point of view, not an MDIF point of view. So I am of Thomas's same mind. that there is still life in print. Maybe not newspaper print, maybe not the traditional magazine format, but all of these digital tools that I've talked about, Stephen practices every day, Shruti's talked about, have created a sales and marketing infrastructure that creates a market for print product that is beyond what was the limited product before. So, and you will see interesting print. There's actually an interesting print magazine in Taiwan called Meijiao. They're two of the most successful print magazines recently. Again, not necessarily news in the public interest. They tend to take advantage of print's tactile feeling to do fashion, food, sports. But there's no reason. I keep waiting for the photojournalistic execution. But I would not write off, let's just say print's been around for thousands of years. There are really beautiful new executions coming out of places all over the world. So I wouldn't write it off. But I would, again, kind of echoing something Shruti was saying earlier, it's going to have to be quite creative in how it uses the technology for sales, for marketing, for community building. A lot of the advantage that, whether it's Yongjin or Stephen or Gloria, a lot of the advantage that they've brought from digital has been the community building aspect, right? And great magazines in the past have had, the brand stood for community. So figuring that out, and I haven't seen anybody really do that in the news, kind of the civic media category. I don't know.
So I have 3 diverse examples that are touching on various aspects, so let me just go through them. First, there was a huge discussion about how digital books were going to replace print books. Actually speaking, print book sales volumes are stabilized. Some people hope to see the growth come back. People have decided that when they want a book, sometimes they want a digital book, and sometimes they want something they can hold in their hands. There are entire Facebook pages and fan clubs about the tactile feel of a book. So, yes, digital has its advantages, and other established products have their advantages, no doubt on that. The second thought that comes to my mind is that in India, there's Gaon Connection. I don't know if you know them. I suppose actually that you would do. So Nilesh Mishra, he's a famous. He actually became famous on radio for narrating, and he has like a great program where he narrates short stories. So that's one connection. He's very interested in the rural market. So he runs a print paper which goes out to the villages in UP. So that's the second connection. I don't know about successful, right? It's a startup. We certainly hope it'll be successful. The third example actually is all of our traditional media houses in India, right? They are a combination of print, multimedia, and digital. They're making their money in print right now. Print in India is growing. Circulation is growing. When you look at the local languages, circulation and revenues are growing really fast. So it's a different market, right? And I would always suggest that we speak about technology because it's what will come in the future, but that does not mean that we do not appreciate the impact or what is the outcome we're trying to drive to, right? So for Omidyar Network, the outcome that we're trying to drive to is not a great digital media product. The outcome that we're trying to drive to is what connects citizens and what helps them sort of like speak about their issues of priority in a public forum. So if there's a great print product, we would be happy to look at it and fund it. The questions of regulation and what's allowed is one aspect, but it's also that sometimes certain markets are difficult, right? If you have any kind of print product, there's the manufacturing, there is the product quality, there's the distribution, there's the marketing of the, of the tactile product itself. These are all skill sets that you need in addition to what you already need as a journalist, as a business person, as a technologist, as an engagement on social media. So I think a lot of people choose to look at digital because it reaches a certain kind of audience and it answers their needs. And it's difficult to have multiple skill sets in the same team. But yes, if there's a great idea, I think a lot of people would be interested in looking at it. And like people like Dainik Jagran and so on, they raise equity funding all the time. Like some newspaper groups in India are actually private equity owned. Most newspapers in USA are private equity owned. So I don't think that you don't have funding for the print product today. You still do.
And I actually think that some of the most successful organizations, particularly in terms of startup or newer organizations, are truly multi-platform. I mean, their primary presence might be digital, but it's expensive and difficult to build an audience. So you want to work through partners to reach other audiences, and you want to reach them where they are. So I think, a lot of organizations that I work with are thinking about the constituency for a particular project they're working on, and maybe the best partner for, distributing that editorial product is the New York Times, or Cosmopolitan in the case of one client I had who was doing, a reproductive health and rights story. It's like, you're reaching a ton of young women who are the constituency that you want with a project like that. So I definitely think that, we do tend to kind of default to thinking about digital as sort of the primary presence, but, the most successful organizations, the most sort of thriving and exciting organizations are really thinking about their presence in all forms of media, print, broadcast, digital, TV, radio. I'm going to say we'll take one more question, and then we'll break out to do some one-on-ones. Oh, sorry.
Just a quick answer to Thomas. I think I think there's life in print, really. When we first started Malaysiakini, we were not thinking about internet. We were thinking about print. It's only that in Malaysia we cannot get a license to do print that we were forced to go to the internet, and at that time, 1999, internet was still pretty new. So I think but increasingly, like it or not, really, newspapers are having problems, and I think looking ahead, really, the print newspapers that is going to survive will have to go niche. So in that sense, you cannot. I don't think general news would do it. Would do it for print because that will be breaking news will be more or less taken over by the online websites. So you may have to look at perhaps the print that actually provide explanatory type analysis type stuff, and it may not be daily. It could be bi-weekly or weekly. And I think there's still a demand for that. So it's not going to die. But it's only that there will be a smaller number of print publications around as compared to before. Just like the radio station, radio did not die, and I think broadcast TV will not die. Perhaps broadcast TV will go online. That's it, really. But it'll still be there.
Hi, I'm Haiyan from Nanjing University. To tell the truth, it's very difficult for the journalism in China as well as journalism education because less and less students don't want to be journalists now because of the political pressure and the capital pressure. So I have two questions for Ross. The first question is, have you ever heard any successful business model for independent journalism except gift money or some fundings? Because some of my friends choose to be independent journalists, but it's very difficult for them not only to raise money but also they are facing the political pressure. So it's very tough to stick on this. So this is the first question. And the second question is for the future journalists. I'm really hope you to give some suggestion to them because they are the future. Thank you.
So actually, I live a good portion of my life in Hong Kong, and I do that partly because it gives me a window onto what I actually think is some very creative. There's an old story about how poetry is dancing in shackles. Journalism in China is a bit like dancing in shackles. But there is a lot of creativity in making a living doing that, whether it's in the mainland of China, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong. You'll see. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. One is a small website in Taiwan called News and Market that focuses on the coverage of kind of the food chain in Taiwan, where there have been some issues with corruption of the food chain. And they make money through an e-commerce platform where they actually sell organic food. So e-commerce is you have one of the world's great publishing platforms in China in WeChat that actually allows you to tip and take direct subscriptions. It's hard. It's small money. Advertising in China it is the advertising market that the rest of the world sees kind of spun up to the highest velocity. It is so fast in China that I think you would have to really be a behemoth to participate in it. The last is, and I mention this just because this is a colleague, so in all the disclosure, is that you'll find citizen journalism-like projects where people want to write. They want to communicate the life they lead today. And I find Chinese, especially young Chinese that are in the 90s generation, the 2000s generation, they don't really see themselves in the press. And so oftentimes they will pay quite well to learn to write, to learn to communicate the world that they live in. And that's actually a revenue stream. And then consolidating that into a media platform. Do I have any advice? My advice would be journalism is a civic duty. It's a civic action. The people that are drawn to it, I find, and this is the reason they inspire me, I find them drawn to service. There are lots of ways of providing service that don't necessarily require the censor's approval. And you see that a lot in whether it is in product reviews and product testing, whether it is in environmental coverage. And again, you never know. The line moves all the time. I'm constantly amazed at the fluidity of the situation in China. But I would say, if you can't write it, find another way to have the impact that Shruti and the Omidyar guys are looking for. It's tough. I haven't seen it as tough as this in a very long time. So I don't know, other suggestions for journalists anywhere. It's tough business everywhere.
Okay, so we have a few minutes where if you have particular questions about your organization that you'd like to explore with any one of us, come on up and visit. I think we can kind of move out to the tables and we'll workshop things for you with a few minutes apiece, okay? Thanks, guys.